How's it going? How's everybody? How you feel? Blessings on your life. Another day that the Lord has made, and we're gonna rejoice and be glad in it. I am Dr. Donnie Eatman, and I am the face of face-to-face introspection. By way of housekeeping notes or items, I want to just say this to you. I can be seen on YouTube, and all you'd have to do is just type in face-to-face introspection, and you will find me on YouTube. Most people do not go to my YouTube page. Why? I don't know. And I'm not the type of person that go out and promote this, that, and the other. My marketing skills is kind of boo boo. So I don't do that. I'm doing this because I love people. I do this because it is a part of my purpose, a mandate, and I'm not here to profit. And that is to profit. I'm not here to profit. I am here to profit, not monetarily, but I am here to profit spiritually and to see people helped. When I see that transformation when I see transformation take place, then I profit in those ways. So I want you, if you have not, because sometimes my messages get cut off at about 25 minutes if I go over. And if you want to judge me for going over 25 minutes, then that just tells me that you ain't ready yet. You can say whatever you want to say, but this is not microwave. You're not going to get it overnight. Okay, so, but in the event that it does shut down, you can always see the message in its entirety on my YouTube page. That is face-to-face introspection, face-to-face introspection. I want to talk today from the subject too much church, too much church. And let me just preference and qualify the reason why I want to bring this to our attention, and the reason why I think it's so germane, so necessary that we understand it. Because I'm not a heretic. I love the Lord, and I love Jesus Christ. I am a disciple of Jesus Christ, but I am also an avid reader, and I'm an avid walker with Jesus. I study different things. I'm an observer of the times. Um, and I have put a lot of historical data and theological reasoning together only to come up with some things that have been very disturbing to me. And so when I say too much church, I'm not talking about the church itself. It's not too much church that way. I'm gonna define that in a minute. But I mean too much church in a secular way, and that is the way that we have embraced church to be for many, many, too many years now. We think that church is what we go to on a weekly basis, and we establish it in these fine edifices, and with these cushiony seats, and with heat and air conditioning, and a pastor from a pulpit, and you got choirs, and missionaries, and deacons, and all the stuff that goes along with a church setting. That is a very modern Western day church setting, but that was not the way that church was in the beginning. Not to say that it should be the way that it was in the early church or the first church, because we're not there. We evolved. And so as you look at evolution, times are going to look different, and it's going to change. However, the thing that I take issue with is not the evolution of it, it's the lack of power. So it's one thing to see us evolve from one thing into another thing, and that's good. But when we evolve from this, where you see the first church or early church and working in power and in soundness of doctrine, to we move into our Western, coming from around the circle of Eurocentric thought, and to our Western um, understanding of how church is to be, that is not the church that Jesus was talking about. And so, from that standpoint, my message is too much church, and let's just talk about it today, because when Jesus was on the earth, uh, he ministered in the synagogue, but most of his ministry was outside of the synagogue, which means it was outside of the church. Most of his ministry was on the floor, and it was on the floor of the streets. And if you go back and you study it, most of it came from the marketplace. And so the thing that I feel that the church is losing the battle with, it is the control of the marketplace. It's the influence of the marketplace. If you go back and you do a study of how effective the church is in the marketplace, the numbers will be very low, with the exception of the Catholic Church. And there's a few other churches out there that they have modeled in such a way that the world pays them attention, but not much. There is one church though that the world does pay attention, that has everything, and that's the Catholic Church, and that's a message for a whole nother day. But the Catholic Church is a church that specializes in the marketplace, meaning that they own everything. They own everything. They are a church within a church, or a city within a city. They are self sufficient. They have their own banks. They have their own malls. They have their own hospitals. They have their own everything. The Catholic Church does. But when you get into the Protestant church, and that was a branch off of in Presbyterian and Baptist and Church of God in Christ and all these other churches or denominations, they did not uh, replicate the model of Catholicism. Not that Catholicism had Christianity right, so there was flaws, but the one business model that they did have, and they still do have, that was a good business model. And more of us need to embrace the model of the real Catholicism. We need to. And so, in essence, what I'm saying is that we have to become more proficient in the market and the things of the world. Daniel, the Bible makes mention of Daniel, and they say that Daniel, his real claim to fame, his strong suit was that he was a man of excellence. He was a man of excellence. When the king Nebuchadnezzar, when he was looking for people to represent him, they went to the princes. They went to, which is high places. They went inside, which is the marketplace, and those was the people that was in the world, that they were studious in different areas. They had aptitudes that should have been able to do a lot of different things. So they did that. And they also, this was the unit, this was the assignment given from King Nebuchadnezzar to his ring eunuch, his chief eunuch. And he says, I need you to go and find this for me, and I need you to find these men that have certain attributes. And so they looked in the palace of the king. They looked outside the palace of the king. They looked at those that were princes, meaning that they were of the Yale, the Harvard, and all that, of high places. They looked for all that. And they also looked in the church. And back then, of all the places that they look for, unlike today, they don't look for the church, because the church is not perceived as having a spirit of excellence or aptitude, or having the wherewithal to be able to run banks and businesses and all that kind of stuff. We don't. We specialize in spiritual stuff. Just I'm gonna get rich by osmosis. I'm gonna get healed by what the preacher said, and he got what he said. He ain't following Jesus, and he didn't even use the word to do. It's just, it can get really convoluted. I'm not saying that to. I don't want to make it sound like I'm against, but I'm just trying to get you to see something and what we have fallen for, which is lended us to be ineffective. We are not effective as the early church was. And so King Nebuchadnezzar says, go and find me certain certain men. He says, go and get me men that are skilled, that are cunning, that are full of wisdom, there were several different attributes that he was looking for. And he says, bring me those men that can stand before the king. Find me those men. Because what the world is looking for right now, y'all, is not people that can preach good. It's not. They don't care about your edifice, your building. They don't care about you being able to ride in a Bentley. They don't care about that. They don't care about the model that you use tithes and offering, and you even misappropriate that, and you go out and you get your houses and your cars and you fleece the people and all that kind of stuff. Y'all might be getting mad at me, but I'm gonna tell. This is introspection. I'm gonna give you something that the pulpit ain't gonna give it to you, because the pulpit is, they walk in fear with this thing, because they don't believe God. Although they're called by God, they don't believe that God will take care of them. And if I had my way, and shout out to pastors, I love pastors, but I'm gonna tell you what would help us the best is that if you quit taking care of us and let God lay on your heart who to take care of. The model that we most of us have went by. Is it don't work. This whole thing about, just give them a salary automatically, all the stuff. I can go down a big rabbit hole with this whole thing, but this does not work. It has not worked. And if you go into different countries, other countries, they don't use this model. And so their pastors are more effective from the standpoint that they're not saying what the people want them to say. They're saying what God would want them to say, because they're more dependent upon God instead of the people. Because the people, you go in Europe and stuff like that, the people don't support them like they do here in the Western world. They don't. It's like, it ain't no way you go to Europe and think that. Now, some of them do, but for the most part, they're not going over there and getting these big high ticket salaries. Am I saying that the man or women of God should not get a high ticket salary? Absolutely not. The Bible says that the labor is worthy of its hire. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that we have taken advantage of it, and there's too many of us now that are not worthy of the hire that we are getting, and you need to go back and prove yourself. And so we need to let God be God, because if God is going to call you into an area, he is also going to provide for you. You don't have to run that offering plate back and forth 5 times before everybody leave. Whatever they was going to give, they was going to give it. And it should be that you give based upon what you have made up in your heart. For God loves a cheerful giver. He don't want you to give reluctantly. That's not the model, according to was it 2 Corinthians 5 and 7, somewhere in there. And that's not the model, but we make it. And again, it's a fear tactic. It's a CEO model and all that. I know some people going to push back on me, and y'all gonna get a little bit mad. But I'm here to tell you the truth, because in the event that I do at some point move into a more pastoral role where I'm dealing with people on a regular basis, my model will look very different. And one of the reasons why my model will look very different is simply because of what I'm trying to bring to you today, that I've become more proficient in the marketplace. And I have learned to master the market, so that the market will provide for me instead of me having to fleece the church. And so when I say too much church, I'm saying that from the standpoint that there's a lot of moving parts, and there's a lot of loose bolts that need to be tightened up. So anyway, when we talk about church, because I got to scurry on here, when we talk about church, Jesus said, he makes this statement. He says, upon this rock, I will build my church. Now, our message title today is Too Much Church. So he says, upon this rock, I will build my church. What was the context behind that? There was a question that was asked, and the question was, whom do men say that I am? Okay. And the answer was, some say that you are Elias. Some say that you this. Some say that you're that. And so he goes on. I'm trying to make this short. He goes on to say, Jesus says to Peter, he says, but whom do you say that I am? And this is very key here, y'all. And Peter says, thou art the Christ. And Jesus responds to him, and he says, flesh and blood has not revealed this to you. Why am I making that a point? Because most of what we plant our conviction, our belief, our understanding, what we wrap our arms around, what we sink our teeth in is things that did not come from, things that did come from flesh and blood. That's most of us. It's things that have come from the flesh and from the blood of man. And Jesus says, flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father in heaven, he has revealed this to you. Now, so what did he say also that maybe a lot of us will run past? He says reveal. That means a revelation. So now the church has to be built. What Jesus is saying is that my church will be built. He's not saying it's going to be built on Peter. He's not saying that it's going to be built on an earthly stone made out of sand and water and other elements. He's not saying that as being a component of rocks. He's not saying that. He's saying that it's going to be, my church is going to stand. My church will be built upon the revelation of my word, of the words that are coming from me out of my mouth, that are coming from the Father. And when you get a revelation of my word, then the church now begins its establishment on that. It does not begin its establishment on a building or on a business model or on what most of us we see today. That's not the church that Jesus was talking about. So it is a revelation of his word. He says the church will be built upon that. Now, the other thing that I want to say about that, because it has a twofold meaning or understanding. And the second thing that I would want to mention in this is that when that conversation was going on between Jesus and Peter, he was in Caesarea Philippi. Caesarea Philippi is known for its rocky terrain. That's what it's known for. And so it was befitting for Jesus now to insert this for such a time as that, because they were around a whole bunch of rocks. And so to the understanding of the people that would hear that message, to them it was like it's an illusion, because if you didn't have a revelation, it would throw you off, because you would start to think that Jesus is talking about rocks or stones. No, he's talking about a revelation, and the revelation has nothing to do with something that is material. It is very immaterial what he's talking about. And so Caesarea Philippi was a rocky terrain, and they were at a place where there was mountains around them. But more importantly, they were at a mouth and that had been hewed out in the mountain. And that mountain was a place where they worshiped the god Pan. They worshiped the god Pan. It was a mouth. It was full of rocks that was all around. So Jesus was saying a couple of things when he says, "Upon this rock I'll build my church." Not Peter, not the rocks that you could see, you could lift, and you could make a house out of, or mountains out of. None of that stuff. But he wanted to do it around rocks because there was an analogy. It was a picture that he was trying to paint. And so he says, "I'm going to overshadow." I want you to understand this. Jesus is saying, "I'm going to overshadow these rocks." These rocks has nothing to do with the revelation of who I am and who God is and why I was sent. Has nothing to do with that. And so he says, "I'm going to build my church." Now, that's the revelation. Upon this rock upon this rock, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. Now, when he builds his church upon this rock, it's going to overshadow everything that has established itself thus far. So this god Pan, which is also the god of panic, is where we get the word panic from. Panic. And the Bible says in 2 Timothy, I believe it is 1 and 7, 2 Timothy, I think it's 2 Timothy, not 1 Timothy, 1 and 7, God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of love, power, and a sound mind. So he's telling you right there that there's something wrong with this control thing that the world has embraced and put out front to establish how people will move and have their being. We are controlled, or we walk in fear on the job. You know, you got a manager that you don't know how they was raised. You know, they could be raised that I don't like certain people because of the color of their skin, because of the way that they look, because of their gender. So I don't like that. And so because of my position, if you don't dance to my music, it's kind of like King Nebuchadnezzar. He says, whenever the music sounds, if you don't fall before me in worship, then he was going to kill you. It's the same thing that's going on now, but we do it in a more subtle way. So it's still fear that is at work, and you don't have leverage. You have to go to work. You have to take all the crap that your supervisor, even though they could be wrong, they could be atheists, they could have no morals, they could be just everything's going on. But you got to be there, and you got to eat a pound of doo-doo every day and walk in that fear. Why? Because you have not positioned yourself in the proper way, because you got too much church and not enough of the marketplace. And I got to get there, because the market is going to vet you. The market is going to prove you. The market is going to position you to where you will have a say-so about your life, about your future. And a lot of us, I'm gonna say 80% of the workforce, they don't have a say in what goes on. Most people aren't even working in their calling. They're not working in their purpose. They're not working in the gifts. They're not working in the talents. In other words, they don't use what God has given them. There is so much. The Bible talks about that we have this treasure in earthen vessels. There's a uniqueness, not just the image and the likeness of God, but God has also given us a talents and a mind, and to be creative and all these things. Well, you can't unleash all that. You know why you can't unleash all that? Because you're walking in fear. You can't unleash all that because the light bill got to be paid, you know, because the little babies is running around, they got to be fed and they got to be clothed, and you know, my boyfriend left me, my husband ain't no good, or in prison, or whatever it is. And so now, you know, the girls and the mamas and all this, they got to fend for themselves. Why? Because they went out and had all these babies. Then they don't know how to control themselves. And then they listen to a whole bunch of stuff that's going in their ear, and the guys don't mean what they say, but the girls are so gullible. And it's a fury of things, a plethora of things that go on that attribute to Pan, this god Pan, which means I'm going to cause you to walk in fear. A lot of houses right now where it's a man and a woman in the household, and it's old school, and the man his father took care of the household, and he ran it with a cast iron. And so, because I go out on the breadwinner, when I come home, things got to be the way I want it to be. The food better be on the table, the sex got to be there, my clothes got to be ironed, everything, and so it's leverage. The leverage is the money. I ain't got time to finish this message, but I'm trying to get y'all here because we living in this space of too much church, because y'all want to spiritualize everything instead of mastering the marketplace where you get something up here. And so when King Nebuchadnezzar went to his eunuch and said, go get me certain men, he drew out of those men of excellence. And so they knew when he brought back Daniel, and basically, the four Hebrew boys, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, and all that, which would have been their the names, that their worldly names. That's not their that's not, excuse me, the names that spoke to their purpose. But when you read that, you look at Belteshazzar, and you go back and you look at it, and then look what the name that the king gave them, because he gave them names that would control them. Again, it's this pantheistic spirit. I am going to rule you by fear. And so a lot of us are like that. But my point was this, is that Daniel, he was skilled. He had wisdom. He was excellent. He was a wise man. And so when they were looking for answers for this and that, because it got to a point to where Daniel was the dude was bad, and he could interpret dreams and this, that, and the other. They got this thing out now called DI, which is divine intelligence, and it is the opposition of AI, which is artificial intelligence, and it's a buzz thing out in the Christian community now, and I'll talk to y'all about that at some point. But anyway, Daniel had this DI attributes, or this function in his life. He was able to get everything that he needed, not artificially, not by that, but divine revelation. And so whereas AI can do things based upon input, you have to feed it, Daniel could do things based upon being connected. That's for another time. Anyway, the marketplace is a place where we develop certain skill sets that we can now isolate ourselves from the world. So a lot of times I talk right now. I have been offered or given an opportunity to go and work for a big business that I could make $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 salary. And to y'all, that sounds like a whole lot of money, right? But here's the thing that I'm trying to get you to see, is the fact that I have options. And that is, I don't have to go and work for them because I don't have to. When I look at it, God took me away from corporate America. Now, they can hang that fruit back in front of me, and these are the things that I'm challenged with on a regular basis. And I can say, man, I'm going to go out and I'm going to get this 600,000. I'm going to get this million, or whatever it is. And I can work, for the man for another 2 or 3 years. But what if 2 or 3 years working under all that stress, what if it kills me? What if I stroke out? What if I have a heart attack? The best place to be is in God. That's the best place to be. So anyway, at the end of the day, I'm trying to juxtapose my position, to contrast it, to say that I have an option. I position myself to have an option, and that is that I'm already okay. I don't need that. It may be more money that I currently bring in, but at the end of the day, I don't need that. Why? Because God has given me freedom. And I can do what I'm doing with you right now. I can go on vacation when I feel like going on vacation, and I can be my own boss and all that. But I worked it. Like T.D. Jakes said, it'll work if you work it. And so at the end, I often talk about the ruler that went away, and he left some of his possessions with one he gave 5, another one he gave 2, and another one he gave 1. And he came back after a period of time, and he came back for his stuff. And it's the same thing that God is requiring of us. He says, I put something in you. There's this treasure that is in earthen vessels. And how grievous is that going to be when he comes back, and he's not going to find that we've done anything with it? When the ruler came back and he looked, he says, I gave you this and I gave you that. And then he finds it was hid under the bed. It was hid under the bushel. And you say, well, I took it and I hoarded it because I was afraid. I didn't want to lose what you gave me. He said it wasn't yours. So it wasn't no sense of you being afraid. I gave it to you to see what you was going to do. So it's a lot of us that are not. It's a lot of us that are not using what God gave us. Some of us are so creative is crazy. I mean, you created in crafts. You can tear engines down and put them back together. You can build houses. You can build roads. You're good as an electrician. You're good as a plumber. You're good as a baker. You're good as a cook. You're good at whatever. But you don't have enough trust and faith and conviction in God to be able to support you, to undergird you, and you'd rather go and work for McDonald's, you'd rather go and work for in manufacturing, you'd rather go do all those things that are traditionally out there because the God Pan, then put so much fear in you. Number one. Number two is that you started living like everybody else. You wanted to live like the world. So when you saw Johnny went out and got a card, and you said, well, I got to keep up with Johnny and Sue, and so I want me a card. And Johnny and Sue may have been in a different position than you, and you go out and you do it, and you find yourself not being able to manage, not understanding money like Johnny and Sue, and you get yourself in a bad place. And so that's not good. And so anyway, we find ourselves in a predicament, in a whirlwind, right? And so I'm trying to help us to get somewhere, and I'm gonna have to break this up into another part because I'm already over my time, and I don't want this to get cut off by Facebook. So, but we're talking today about too much church, and so let me just leave that as part one, right? I am going to pause this for a second. I'm gonna come back, and then we'll be to pick right back up where we left off, and we'll go into part number two. Okay, see you in a few. Okay, so I'm back, and we are doing part two, our continuation of Too Much Church. Too Much Church. We established in our last few minutes together that what the church was, and it was the revelation or the word of Jesus Christ. And we also talked about how destructive that is when we don't know anything and we can't apprehend the marketplace, when we don't know. See, there's this thing out now that they call it ethnos. Some people say ethnos, but it is a language. And it is a language of the day. They talk about the sons of Issachar, and they say that the sons of Issachar understood the times. And understanding the times, you also need to be proficient in the language. So when we talk about ethnos, it is understanding what is being said or used in the dispensation that you live in that can be used against you. And so one of the things that can be used against you is contracts. When you go and you buy a car, there's a contract that you get in, which that's an agreement. It's like a covenant. But if you don't understand the contract, the agreement, the covenant, then you don't understand the ethnos. So it's an ethnos, a language that the world or the business arena understands. People that are in banking and in business, they understand it, but you don't understand it. And yet they know that you don't understand it, but you go out and you purchase a vehicle. So when you purchase that vehicle, a lot of times, 50% of the time, those people, they end up losing it because they don't understand the language of the day. You go and you sign a contract, a business deal with somebody, but you don't know the ethnos. And we find that in sports. Mike Tyson, he complains about it. There's a lot of people that they got into something. I got into a contract with such and such, and they got me because at the end of it, they owned me. They owned my records. They own this and they own that. And I just got the short end of the stick. And now they're making millions off of me. It's my voice. It was my talent. It's my swag. It's my style. All this is, you know why they got you is because there was something that you didn't know. And so when I say too much church and not enough of the marketplace, I am telling you this, y'all, because we have indulged too much and exhausted too much of our time in this thing called church. And even though we might love God, but God didn't call us to be dumb. He didn't call us. He says, in business, be men. God didn't say in the church. He said in business. In business, we'll get to this thing here in a few minutes about this business piece. So, but we would rather establish ourselves as, this high, potent, powerful prophet, pastor, evangelist. And so you're going to gain traction, inertia. Your momentum is going to come from a name that they put on a marquee. Well, such and such is going to be here. And when such and such come, it's going to be good for them because they're going to be able to get their little $5,000 and go home. But it ain't going to be so good for you. They know when they do an offering call, when they say, I need so many people to bring $1,000 up here, so many people bring 500, and so on and so forth. Y'all know how I go. They already encountered their money, and the church encountered their money too. And the only people ain't counted their money is you. And so it's too much church in the wrong way. And it's not enough knowledge. It's not enough aptitude. It's not enough understanding. It's not enough wisdom. And so we have to become more proficient and excellent like Daniel in those things, because Jesus now is counting on that. Now, I got to get us to a place today. Now, you got to understand something. When we talk about the church, and as it relates to currency, and as it relates to being effective and all that, let me just say this. The Bible says this. It says this. He says that Jesus is at the age of bar mitzvah, right, which is 12, and he's at the synagogue, and according to his mother, according to the people that was around, he was lost. Y'all hear me? He was lost. When they found him, they said, "Where you been, boy? Where you been? What you doing running around here? You got lost, and you should have been real close to us. That we are out here, us, as we are dependent upon Caesarea Philippi, upon the mouth of Pan, to walk in fear, upon the things that everybody has said was so solid to stand on, the stock market and all this kind of stuff. Do I need to know about the stock market? Sure. But is that a sure thing for me? No. So he says, they say, "Where you been, boy?" And he says this, he says, "Didn't you know that I had to be, need be, must be about my Father's business?" Now watch this. Here's the challenge, y'all. The challenge is this. When Jesus made that statement as a boy, what he was saying was, I got to be about the purpose and the assignment for my life. I got a question that I want to present to y'all today. How many of y'all know what the purpose and the assignment is for your life? That's the business. That's the business end of it. It is what we call in the Greek the pragma. It's the business. It's knowing the relationship between you and God, or God the Father, what he assigned you to do. And are you doing that? Are you working at that? Are you positioning yourself for that? Where are you at with that? Or can you make the statement, didn't you know I am being about my Father's business, or the purpose for my life? How many of us out there in the church world we are actually going about our day to day being about the Father's business? He didn't say being about the church. He was in the synagogue. He was at church. He was at the convention, right? I talk to people now. I say, what y'all getting ready to do? Or we got the workers meeting, and I'm like, now don't y'all beat me up for this, right? But at some point, we got to take an inventory of what has been, and we've got to compare, contrast, juxtapose it to what is. And as Dr. Phil would say, and how is that working for you? Now, they got the same name, but I challenge us today, and this is not an indictment, this is not me beating up, but this is a time of reflection and inventory, a deep dive. What is these meetings? What life are they producing? Because see, now I'm gonna tell y'all something. I've been in the church a long time. And I don't care what y'all say. Y'all can say what y'all want to say about me. Y'all can say what y'all want to say about me, Donnie Lee. Y'all can say what y'all want to say. I've seen God. And I've seen a side of God that don't quite look like a lot of the church models that we represent, or that is supposed to represent us. I've seen a lot of it. And so if I was, a couple years in the faith, it'd be different. The other thing is this. I ain't just talking about what I read. I'm telling you right now about what I'm living. So when I talk about health, when I talk about finances, when I talk about too much church, all this stuff, I'm not your boy that they're going to sign, that somebody's going to a point that don't know nothing just because you can bring a message. I'm far from that. I've been vetted. Okay. I've been through the rain. I've been through the storm. I've been left for dead. I've been buked. All that, you name it, it's done happened to me. I've been sick unto death. I've been bankrupt, literally and spiritually. I mean, bankrupt, then lost everything. I know how it is to live being abased. I know how it is living to be abound. Okay, I know all of it. I know things that most Christian leaders don't know, including bishops. Many bishops, they have influence, and a lot of them have influence because the people don't know. And then they'll say to me, "Why aren't you, following that person?" It takes some kind of man to get me to follow him. And I'm not saying that I am standoffish and I can't be led. All that, I ain't saying that, not at all. Because I've got there's 3-4 men in my lifetime that, man, listen, I give it all up for. I give it all up for. And they spot on. They the real deal. But for the most part, you don't see a lot of that. So it's out there. I'm not saying that it's not. But it's gonna take a lot. For me, you're gonna have to come. You got to come correct, cause nah. Anyway, so this is the model when I say too much church, and he says, don't you know that I got to be about my Father's business? The Father's business is not for us to go to church every Sunday or every Wednesday. That's not it. It's not to hold prayer rallies and a deliverance service. All that's good. All these things are really good. But can I tell you something? And I want y'all to listen to me, and I'm going to have to close this up. This part of it, I'm going to close this up. Do you know that when Jesus, at the end of Jesus' life, there's a man named Joseph of Arimathea? If y'all don't know, y'all go and y'all can read about it in Matthew 27. It's also in, I believe, Mark 15, somewhere in there. Just read it towards the end, when Jesus, towards the crucifixion. There's this man, Joseph of Arimathea. And when Jesus was, and I got to close, when Jesus was being accused, and when he was coming before great men that had the power, so they thought, because what happened to Jesus had to happen to Jesus. It wasn't that the governor, it wasn't that Caesar, it wasn't that Pontius Pilate could do anything to Jesus. It wasn't that. It was the fact that prophecy was going to be fulfilled, and God had a bigger plan, which was the Jesus to be the kinsman redeemer and to save the world. And so if Jesus hadn't did what he did, then we wouldn't be afforded where we are today. But I want you to see something else. Joseph of Arimathea, however you want to say that. He comes towards the end, and this is after the crucifixion. Let me just say this before the crucifixion, just to qualify this church piece, why it's too much church. Do you not know that when they were accusing Jesus, that they was not going to crucify Jesus based upon how many people he healed, based upon his teaching, based upon his preaching, based upon his prophecy, based upon his benevolence, based upon how many prayers went up and how often he prayed. These are all church functions, and they're very necessary and very needed. Okay, but the world, I'm trying to get you to see something, why we need to master the marketplace, because if you master the marketplace, the world will pay attention to the church. And so all these things that Jesus had, he was anointed. He could lay hands on the sick and they will recover. He could raise the dead. All these church things now, y'all, right? Pontius Pilate and the governor, they was concerned, but they wasn't going to crucify him for that. What they was going to crucify him for was, they said, wait a minute, now all this church stuff, I understand all this, but are you going under this title, the King of the Jews? That word king. Because soon as you say king, you elevate Jesus to a political arena. Y'all hear what I'm saying? A political. Now, he's competing just like the same way we're competing today. The government, the rulers of this world is competing against the spirit, the divine divinity of the earth. Is in the earth. They compete. What they say is that y'all good. Y'all can keep on doing those little healing ministries over there. Keep going to church. Keep doing your hallelujahs and praises and all that kind of stuff. Do all that. We ain't got no problem with that. But as soon as you get into politics, as soon as you get into the roles where you're going to be able to influence people with power and money, As soon as you can say, I want everybody to vote, and you get millions of people to vote based upon how you direct and what comes out of your mouth from a political standpoint, as soon as you start doing that, oh, it's time to cut you now. It's time to cut you. Notice it. Go back and read it. He did not get pushback for all the church things that he did. But as soon as there was tension between Caesar, and Jesus being the king, you saw right, you being Jesus. But when you say that you king, did I hear you say you was king? Now you're talking. Now you're talking. So at this point, the world, from a political standpoint, they got to get involved. And now, if you're talking about you getting ready to come in and take over, I own this. Caesar, I know I run things around here. I run these things. I run this. This is my house. This is my country. These my people. Now that little stuff that you're doing, that's cool, but don't get carried away. Now stay in your lane. Stay in your lane. Okay, that's what the church been trying to get y'all to do. That's why it's too much church, because they want to keep you in your lane. Don't get into politics. Don't be a judge. Don't be a lawyer. Okay, don't do the things where you're gonna be influence the marketplace. Don't get into that, because as soon as you get into that, then you might get some influence. Joseph of Arimathea. The reason why he got a seat at the table. Watch this, y'all, and I gotta close. Joseph of Arimathea, and I want y'all to think about this, because y'all knock me and everybody say, well, why don't you get a church? Why don't you get this? But can I tell you this? The money gonna speak louder than the church. But what the church gotta have is money in it. I will be able to influence and bring way more people when I come and y'all see me. And dude, he showed up. He got a Porsche. He got Range Rovers. He got Mercedes. He's got Bentleys. He's got 2 or 3 houses. And ain't nobody giving him a dime. Well, what's going on? How did... Now I got to take note. But you don't take note of the preacher that can hoop, that can preach, that can sound good, that can sermonize and all this stuff. But he got to keep on. I got my hand out. Y'all know now. Y'all know. All right. Workers meeting coming up. Y'all now. I need a new suit. I need some money now in my pocket. I can't go down here broke now. Come on now. Come on. I need my house. I need my mortgage paid. Not that I got a house that I own. Oh, no, I ain't got no house that I own. I need my mortgage paid. Oh, I need my rent paid. All this kind of stuff. See, this is why the world ain't scared of the church. They don't pay us no attention. Joseph of Arimathea. So at the end, Jesus dies now. Joseph of Arimathea is not talked about a lot, just like me. Not talked about a lot. But he has something, and he's noted for being a rich man. He was rich. Just like Abraham. Abraham ain't noted for being a prophet, but he was one of the greatest prophets. They don't talk about him being a prophet, but the Bible says he was a prophet. But y'all want to talk about that because the prophet that he was, one of the prophets that he was Joseph. Joseph had a whole bunch of loot. He had a lot of bounty. Anyway, I'll talk about that another time. Joseph of Arimathea. So Joseph of Arimathea, he comes back, and I want y'all to put this picture in your head. So first of all, he's got to get a seat at the table, because Jesus' body can't go with the regulars. When Jesus got off the cross, had he just got off the cross and the Romans was going to be in charge of his body, they was going to throw him in with all the rest of the regular dead folks. Just throw him away like garbage. Just a garbage field. Just throw him away. Joseph of Arimathea, he comes and he says, wait a minute. He says, I just want the body. But wait a minute. Before he could do that, it's like me in a time where there's an upheaval and there's a bunch of stuff that's going on in the world, and I got to go see Trump, President Trump. Now, first of all, I got to get past a whole lot of people to go see President Trump in order to get his ear. And I want y'all to think about it, because this is how powerful he was. A disciple of Jesus. He was a powerful man, yet that it wasn't loud. They didn't say a lot about him, but he's a powerful man, and people knew how powerful he was. Now, so he comes and he gets through. He's got to break through walls. And so all these people now are making way, and they said, Joseph of Arimathea. Joseph. He a church guy, but he's a marketplace man. He got a lot of money. He's the Steve Jobs of the day. And so, or the Elon Musk of the day. So he walks up and he's talking to people, and these people are moving. They're moving mountains and stones and walls out the way, because this is Joseph of Arimathea. And they know that this is a powerful man. Now, he don't talk a lot, and he ain't putting on crusades, but we know him. We know that this dude, when he speaks, is like E.F. Hutton. When he speaks, the world is going to listen. And so now all of a sudden, the governor, Pontius Pilate, he is now hearing that Joseph of Arimathea, hey man, I need to holler at you. Now just imagine that. How can I, where I'm at, get the ear of Trump? Ain't no way. All the Secret Service, all the different wings of government that you got to get past, you got to get through. He's a big businessman. He know all these people. He's got influence, all kind of stuff like that, right? There's no way that little old Donnie, there's no way that the little old church, there's no way that the little old prophet can get through, and he might have a word from the Lord, but he ain't gonna be able to get to the man that can make a difference, that can say, give the body over here, or do this, or to do that. He won't be able to get to him. Why? Because he ain't got enough clout. Joseph of Arimathea, he moved mountains. And so he got a place to get in and have a meeting during a time when Jesus, the greatest event of all times, it was in an uproar. Jesus had just died. And Joseph of Arimathea said, listen, I got to get that body. And he got a seat at the table. And Pilate let the body of Jesus go. The governor, the one in charge, Caesar, the biggest name, the biggest authority, the biggest everything, let him go and release him to Joseph of Arimathea. Why? Because of who Joseph of Arimathea was. This is the reason why I say too much church. Y'all got to get to the point to where you talk about me, you say, well, you know, he's the pastor of the stock market. You know, I talk about stocks and bonds. I talk about politics. I bring about a balance to the divine, okay, and the practicality. See, the spiritual and the practical has to be balanced. At the end of the day, the revelation is Jesus Christ. The revelation is God, comes from God at the end of the day. But we've got to be able to position ourselves so we have enough power to do the things of God. That's the difference between the early church, the first church, where Peter and Paul, they could walk in their shadows, would be cast upon men. They were doing a whole lot of things because they had not just the spiritual wherewithal, not just the acumen. They were smart people, but they had influence. They had influence. And so when they walked and they talked, they got a seat at a lot of these different tables. It's too many of us in the church. We can't get no seat nowhere. Get a seat at what table? To talk to who? Who you is? Who you is around here? You better go on somewhere. Go on back to your manager now. Your little manager at the little store. That little office max that you run. Go on back there. You see what I'm saying? I'm not saying something's wrong with that. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is that God has made us to be a peculiar. We are a royal priesthood, a very peculiar people. We are the head and not the tail. Okay, God has given us something special. But why is it that we don't look special? And the reason why we don't look special is because we're doing too much of prescribed church. It's not a church that Jesus was talking about. Church, men and women of God. All right, listen, hope this message got to you a little bit. And I want you to just to, let it marinate in your soul. Get way down in this area, way down in here. All right, I love y'all. Ain't nothing y'all can do about it. Y'all know who I am. Dr. D. L. Eatman. I am the face of face-to-face introspection. I love y'all. Ain't nothing y'all can do about it. Go with God. God will go with you until we meet again on the next time. Peace. Shalom. God bless.